Hello, this is Jamie Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on the Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have GOP House Foreign Affairs Committee tweets, "It is un-American to be afraid of big dreams, i.e. annexing Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal," from Twitter, and that's from posted by LegioX, and that's a tweet from Jamie Dupree, the GOP House Foreign Affairs Committee account, deleted their tweet. That's why I screenshot it, and they tweeted, "Our country is built by warriors and explorers. We tamed the West, won 2 world wars, and were the first to plant our flag on the moon. President Trump has the biggest dreams for America, and it's un-American to be afraid of big dreams." And that's the link. And then they posted a picture of the New York Post cover, "The Donroe Doctrine, Trump's Vision for Hemisphere." And yeah, I personally would be against annexing Canada, Greenland, or the Panama Canal. Personally, I would have been even against annexing states that are currently in the Union, like Hawaii back in the day, or maybe even Texas before that. I think, we need as small and localized government as possible, and constantly adding new territories to your country is a good way of making that even harder to do. So yeah, I definitely think we need to primarily focus on the individual level and reducing the size of countries rather than increasing the size of them and adding more people to them. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Fox News host calls for a military invasion of Canada. "I want to quench my imperialist thirst," from MediaMatters.com. And that was posted by Knee Concussions. And that's crossed from the Fox Fiction subreddit. And yeah, Media Matters is just kind of a DNC propaganda organization. I think it was kind of meant in jest. But regardless, as I said earlier, I don't think we should be expanding the size of the country any more than it currently is. In fact, I would say we should be thinking about splitting up through national divorce rather than expanding it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, according to Huffman, $2 billion over 6 years to public schools is unsustainable, but $1 million per year to private schools is just hunky-dory. No problems here. From OhioCapitalJournal.com by Donald Key, and that's crosswords from the Ohio subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't think we should have public schools at all. I don't think the government should be running schools. I think all schools should be private schools. But I don't think the government should be giving private schools money either, because that I think kind of defeats the purpose of them being private. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the Free Market at Work from Ragnarok KXG, and that's crosspost from the Anti-Work subreddit. "Make it make sense. The world is insane." And that's from, I think it looks like that story from The Guardian or something. Essentially, nearly 400 incarcerated firefighters deployed as LA battles wildfires. The firefighters earn $5.80 to $10.24 per day, plus $1 an hour, when responding to an active emergencies, according to CDCR. And yeah, I personally think if it's voluntary work and they should be able to do it, I don't think they should be forced to work if they don't want to. With that being, I personally think forced prison labor isn't good. But with that being said, I think if prisoners don't want to work, the state would be fine cutting entitlements to them, like if healthcare or food as well. And that's my thoughts on that issue. I personally don't really care for the whole prison system as it is currently. If I were me, I'd just cut the prison system and either have private corporations run it, or just throw prisoners into like an island somewhere and have them duke it out amongst themselves. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have support the Libertarian Party of Canada from Funkale321, and that's a picture of the Libertarian Party of Canada logo. They're going to have upcoming elections since their prime minister just resigned. I don't think the Libertarian Party of Canada has any chance of winning, just like the Libertarian Party of the U.S., but I definitely think I might vote for them if I lived up in Canada. Though I do like the guy who's leading the Conservative Party up there. I probably still would end up going for the Libertarian Party. And yeah, that's my thoughts there. Then we have Amika Moda fires as a prisoner for 53 cents an hour. Now free. She can't work as a firefighter, from democracynow.org. And the user who posted that has since deleted their account. And yeah, I personally don't really. I think we should make the hiring market easier for ex-felons. And Yeah, I do think if she wanted to be a firefighter, since she worked as a firefighter when she was a prisoner, she should be able to. But that being said, ultimately it does come down to who wants to justify doing what. And yeah, I do think ex felons are having a moment. The president that we just elected a lot of his detractors would label him a felon. So I guess we'll have to see what how people feel when it comes to felon employment. I personally think it's only on the upswing, especially with how few people are willing to work these days. It seems, especially with all the government rules and regulations that deter people from doing so. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Elon Musk and far-right German leader agree Hitler was a communist from Wired.com, and that's financial lever, and that's crossword from the r/Europe subreddit. And yeah, I personally don't care for Hitler, but I wouldn't say he was a communist. I'd say he's a fascist. But fascism and communism in practice are pretty much the same thing, I would say. So I don't think it's that big a gaffe. I would argue. And I also love how the far right leader is a lesbian who's married to a brown woman, but if you dissent at all, you're far right, and that's what you see on Reddit. You're not allowed to dissent at all, or else they'll label you far right. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Joe Rogan, U.S. should take over Mexico after Canada from thehill.com by Yoke Pearl, and that's crosswords from the Internet Today subreddit. And yeah, I think he and Theo Vaughn, who's in the episode of the podcast, were just joking around. But these days Reddit that they think jokes are fascism. So yeah, that's how bad Reddit is. Reddit thinks anything at all, even if it's joking, is fascism. So that's why I really don't care for it anymore, for it that much. It's outside of a few select subreddits, it's exclusively pretty much gluing on shit liberty, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have California's wildfire insurance catastrophe from Lemon Limelight, and they said from a Wall Street Journal editorial, California's wildfire insurance catastrophe, emphasis added, conditions across Los Angeles County have created a perfect storm that could become the most expensive wildfire disaster in U.S. history. The human tragedy is paramount, but the insurance losses will be into the tens of billions of dollars or more. The damage could topple the state's undercapitalized insurer of last resort, FAIR. Private carriers are almost certain to increase premiums, cancel policies, or withdraw from California. Insurers have already scrapped hundreds of thousands of policies and limited coverage in wildfire-prone areas, but the real insurance problem is that state regulators have barred insurers from charging premiums that fully reflect risks and costs. California is the only state that heretofore hasn't allowed insurers to incorporate the cost of reinsurance in the premiums. Until this year, it has also prohibited insurers from adjusting premiums by using the standard industry practice of catastrophe modeling to predict a property's future risk. Insurers could only assess premiums based on historical losses. As a result, insurers are paying out $1.09 in expenses and claims for every $1 they collect in premiums. This is financially unsustainable, which is why many have paired coverage in areas as high risk of expensive homes. FAIR now covers about $500,000 homeowners who can't obtain private coverage. Its exposures ballooned to $558 billion as last September from $158 billion 4 years earlier, with $5.9 billion in exposure in the Palisades, yet it is only about $700 million cash on hand to pay claims. That's because state regulators have required FAIR to cover higher-priced homes while rejecting its proposals for rates increases to account for risking rates-based liabilities just as it has for private insurers. And yeah, I personally don't really care for state-based insurance. I think it should only be private. But I think if people want to pay for state-based insurance through voluntary taxation, they should be able to do so. But that being said, if they don't feel like doing so, I don't think they should be forced to do so. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that issue. I personally would be against FAIR as a whole. But if taxpayers do want to pay for it, I think they should be able to do so. But I don't think they should be forced to do so if they don't want to. Then we have Trade Unionism is Satanic, coming soon to Theocracy broadcast near you, and that's from the website tradeunionismsatanic.com by CH4Locks. And yeah, I personally wouldn't describe trade unionism as satanic, but I personally don't think it's that good. I think, if workers do want to form voluntary collectives, that they should be able to, but I do think it gives them too much power, and that might go to their heads. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts responsibility, absolutely. And I definitely think you see that when it comes to labor unions. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have Team Red folks from Donald Key, and that's crosswords from the Facepalm subreddit. These parasites do not represent anyone. And that was GOP lawmaker says disaster relief should be withheld from California until state implement Republican policies. And yeah, I think he might have just been joking. If he wasn't, I do think California is pretty much a shithole. I think everyone would agree with that. That's why it's one of the states people are most leaving. But I do think they should give them disaster relief. But I do think you got to hold people accountable for allowing this to happen in the first place. That it's like they're just gonna say, oh, it's climate change's fault. Oh, it's a Republican's fault. Well, in reality, they need to take personal responsibility for why their state is such a shithole and act accordingly, but they won't because that would go against their circle jerk. And when it comes to social media, no one can. It seems like no one can go against their circle jerk, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the Laken Riley Act is unjust and a Trojan horse from Reason.com by Baton 13, and they add the act doesn't target violent criminals and sex offenders and is likely to harm innocent people and divert resources from genuine anti-crime efforts. It also makes it easier for state governments to try to impede legal immigration. And yeah, I guess I would agree with that. I personally think Laken Riley was a victim of an illegal immigrant criminal, but that doesn't mean that the act won't be used to extend to be perfect for government authoritarian purposes. It's a lot like the Inflation Reduction Act. It will say it does one thing but end up doing another thing. You can't just believe what the government calls the act. You gotta question it beyond what the media tells you. It's like when the media says Florida has the "Don't Say Gay" bill. That people think, oh, you can't say gay in schools anymore. That's illegal. Well, that was just what the media calls it. And you gotta critique what the media presents to you about all the bills. Personally, I think every bill is bad to some extent in that it gives government power to do anything at all. But that's just my thoughts there. And yeah, next we have gutter oil from Wikipedia. Government regulations go to volume market, and that's the link to the Wikipedia page for gutter oil by CH4 Locks. And I personally don't want to use gutter oil, but I think if people want to use gutter oil, they should be able to do so. I think people should be able to use whatever materials they want to with their own bodies and among any consenting parties as long as they're of age. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And then finally, we have The Army of God Comes Out of the Shallows from TheAtlantic.com by Ninja Lover. And that they had tens of millions of American Christians are embracing a charismatic movement known as the New Apostolic Reformation, which seeks to destroy the secular state. And yeah, I personally don't really care for those guys, but I don't really care for all the blue and woke shit lives on Reddit either, and they seem to be more numerous than actual Christian nationalists. I dare say, America gets less Christian every year, and Christian nationalism is not really a big problem, despite how outlets like The Atlantic want to market it as such. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And I think we're going to wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.